Okay, it must be Friday. We have likable science today from the 1 to 2 block. And we have the honor of Cecilia Shikuma, MD. She is a professor of medicine at John A. Burns School of Medicine, JABSOM. And she is a researcher in HIV/AIDS. And she is the director of the Hawaii Center for AIDS. Welcome to the show, Cecilia.
Thank you very much.
It's great to have you here. So you were a star in our program last week. What was it, January 22nd, where we, at Laniakea, we produced something called Hawaii, the state of health. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to, the state of health, yeah, as an industry, mm-hmm. and we wanted to demonstrate that not only do we have research, but we had the makings of an industry. So what did you think of the program?
You know, I really enjoyed participating in it. I think we need more of those. You know, because I think unless we pull resources together and our thoughts together to try to make something big in Hawaii, I think we're far behind. And I think we have wonderful scientists here, a wonderful opportunity, and I really would like to make the most of it.
You know, I remember, one of the issues, and I wrote a column about it once, is where faculty at UH can actually get together, in larger sense, the whole crowd. And there is no place, really. Mm-hmm. And I suggested in my article that it be, that the College Hill be used as a gathering place, social. I mean, social is important. Mm-hmm. And I think they're starting to do that. There was an article recently. To his credit, David Lasner is not living there. This is a really good thing, and he's allowing it to be used. And I hope that however they manage it, they bring you in.
You know, that would be a wonderful idea because, as you know, I'm in JABSOM. And I associate with this little group of investigators that have research things in common. But it's very rare for us to get outside of our program. And you tend to associate with people whose lab or their research programs are kind of in the same floor, in the same building as you, certainly. And even within the Department of Medicine, we're scattered throughout the state. Yeah. And so, we don't know JABSOM researchers as a group, let alone people who are in the cancer center that's in the building next to us. And when you talk about University of Hawaii and Mānoa, we have really no communications with them. Mm-hmm. So an opportunity to just, get together socially it sounds like a good idea to me. Yeah. Because in conversation, things come back and says, oh, really? Yeah. You're doing that? I've been looking for a researcher that can help me with this.
Yeah. So, when you're there just schmoozing, you find points of collaboration, of common denominators so easily. Yeah. But you have to be there.
That's right. That's right.
ThinkTech understands that. That's why we do this show. We have a number of science and tech shows, and we really like to introduce people and have them participate. One of the things that was interesting is you're not the only one who said that about bringing people together. I remember it was Andrew Howard, the astronomer. He went on about it. In fact, he's coming down here in a few days about the fact that it's really valuable to meet and this was nice at Laniakea, but it has to be more often, and if for no other reason, just to say hi.
Yeah. And, I guess it'll be lovely to round up a lot more investigators, than the small places that you have, in your programs.
Well, one thing at that program that sticks in my mind, the reason I am so fresh on it is because I made a movie from the footage that we took. And I just submitted the movie this morning to OC16, and on Sunday, by the way, if you're interested, at 10:30 p.m., they will show the movie. They'll show it 7 times through the week following. It's not everything you said because we didn't have room for that, but it's some of what you said and some of what everybody said, and it gives you the flavor anyway. And one of the things that I remember from looking, editing the movie was Neil Atabara said, everybody has a story. And when you're talking about researchers, especially people who have achieved things and who you want to hold up as an icon and as a role model, you need to know the story. So I'm here to ask you, Cecilia, what's your story?
Okay. In other words, how I got into HIV research. Well, I'm old enough so that I was at the very beginning of when HIV came on the horizon. And no one knew what it was. And all they knew was that it was predominantly gay males that were getting infected. and they were being infected by these weird diseases that no one with an intact immune system has any business getting. So the only people that used to get those kinds of diseases were people with leukemia, other cancers, very debilitated people.
This is 15, 20 years ago. Yeah.
Oh, more than that.
More than that. Okay, right.
But I was in an infectious disease fellowship, and we had this, a young 20-year-old come in, very, very sick, with pneumonia. And, we knew nothing about him except that he's never been sick in his life. He was extremely healthy until all of a sudden he got this pneumonia and ended up in the hospital. And we found out subsequently that he had a type of an organism causing the pneumonia called pneumocystis carinii. And it's one of those diseases, like I said, that really should not be attacking healthy males or anyone, certainly not in the 20s.
Yeah.
And we didn't. AIDS had not been come up in any kind.
Nobody knew anything about it.
No, nothing about it. And I was an infectious disease fellow, being trained to be a specialist. And we would make rounds, and it operates something like what you see on the, those TV
The
shows.
TV, right, yeah.
Right, where you go from room to room,
Yeah.
someone presents the patients to your attending,
Yeah.
to the boss,
Yeah.
and says, this is, what the problem is, this is what I'm going to do, and how I'm going to treat it. And so we're presenting this, guy and saying, well, everything's negative except that he has this pneumocystis pneumonia. And he looked at us and says, no one who's 20-year-old and healthy gets this disease. You guys are missing something, some leukemia,
It sounds like
some
House.
cancer.
It sounds like my favorite show, House.
Yeah.
Dr. House.
So he said, just start from scratch, and I want to see everything repeated. And it was,
How exciting.
well,
He knew there was something there that
there
would
was
take
something
you to
there,
a new
that's right.
level. Yeah.
And the next week, the first report of this disease, and it was called GRID, gay-related, kind of immunodeficiency, came out of San Francisco.
Just what a coincidence, huh?
Yeah. And, I must say, it was, actually, intellectually, as a budding researcher, you want to do something for the patient, and you don't have the tools to do anything, because all we did was we watched helplessly while this,
He was declining.
he was declining, and he actually, passed away, like, almost everyone with AIDS did at that time.
Yeah.
And so I think, I really developed a passion that said, there must be something we can do about it. And that's kind of how I got into HIV research.
Wow. Where'd you go to medical school?
This was the University of Southern California, LA County.
Okay. Ooh,
Yeah.
They have a lot of activity there.
Oh yeah, a lot of patients.
Okay, and so tell me about your career from that point on.
Okay.
Now, after making that, part of the story we always want to know about is that exquisite moment where you committed to something that
Yeah.
really changed your life. And you've told us that.
Yeah.
I really appreciate
Yeah,
that.
but it's not that easy because I'm in training as a physician. I really had no background in research. People who know very early on that they want to go into medical research, start out in medical school making research and, a part of their curriculum, finding opportunity to do it. That's not anything that I did. I'm towards the end of my training as a physician. After training, I came back to Hawaii, and...
Had you always intended to come back?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Hawaii's home, it's exciting to be elsewhere, but, I wanted to be home.
Yeah, great.
And I was doing infectious disease out in the community, doing consults. And it's about that time that the university announced that they were getting into HIV research because there was some funding available. And they had recruited this infectious disease specialist who is trained as a researcher from Harvard to come to Hawaii to head this program.
Now, at this moment, you're practicing, right?
I'm practicing.
You're
I have nothing to do
clinical
with it.
medicine.
That's right.
A regular doctor person.
That's right.
Okay.
And I bumped into her at one of these infectious disease seminars, we have. And she says to me, well, I really need some physicians to join me because it's not like I can run the research by myself. And this is clinical research, which means that you're dealing with patients. It's not test tube research. So you, someone says, I need to know more about how you treat HIV. I think this new drug will work better. In which case, you need to do a study that says, does drug B work better than A?
Yeah.
And so that's the
Dealing
kind of
with real
research.
patients.
Real patients. And she needs physicians because you have to really watch the patients like a hawk and make sure that they're certainly not getting into trouble with these new medications. So I said,
That's pretty exciting.
I wanted to do this. I'm, here. I'll join you.
Do you think you would have said that had you not been involved in that rounds
No.
that you talked about?
No.
Yeah.
No. It was almost kind of a dream come true to really be part of that.
Yeah.
And when she came, the science field was still at a point where everyone was dying of AIDS.
Yeah.
And so we went through, I think, a fairly frustrating 5 years doing
Get this
research.
straight, though. You gave up the practice of medicine
Yeah.
in order to do this clinical research. That is something.
Well,
What
I
was
didn't
in your-
actually give it up because
okay.
I was, you take care of patients in the context of research.
Yeah.
So you're essentially practicing medicine.
You're specializing
Yeah.
your practice. is
Right,
what
that's
you're
true.
doing.
We're coning down to HIV patients, you're right.
Okay, but that is a fantastic decision. It's
Yeah.
a life decision. Because when you
Yeah.
start putting that kind of effort in, you're really committing the rest of your professional life somehow.
Yeah, but I'm sure people who, as you said, have a defining moment and, really get interested and find a need to deal with infections and cancer, feel the same
But
way.
there's something else, though, too, Cecilia. I mean, most doctors, you can comment on or disagree with me, but most doctors expect to have certain earnings during their lifetime. And notwithstanding all the troubles of practice these days and all the Medicare and the paperwork and blah, 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 they intend to do pretty well, live pretty well. But when you commit to research like this, you're changing the paradigm on that.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you're not in that mold. You're in a different mold, and you're probably not going to, unless you strike it rich somehow, you're not going to.
Right.
And so there had to be a thing about humanity here. There had to be common good.
Yeah.
For you know?
But you feel good about yourself when you're dealing with something you're very passionate about.
Yeah. Well, that was quite something.
Yeah.
That was humanitarianism for sure.
Yeah.
So now you specialized in this
Yes.
here in Hawaii,
Right.
but at the medical school.
Yes.
What was it like?
Well, first I should tell you that, I told you about this HIV investigator from Harvard. And she had agreed to come here. And she had a husband who was a banker. And her husband had always wanted to live in Hawaii because it's paradise. But 2 years later, he says, well, I really enjoyed living in Hawaii, but I need to be back in Chicago because that's where the banking business, is. And so she says...
How many times have we heard stories like this?
Yeah, so she says, okay, it's all yours, And so after 2 years, I actually took over, her position as directing the program.
That was destiny.
Well, I don't know. It was very scary, but I think we did well.
Yeah, okay. So now, 2 years later, you're the head of the program.
Right.
Does that mean the director of the Hawaii Center for AIDS or something else?
It was not called the Hawaii Center for AIDS. It was just called the Hawaii AIDS Research Program, but it was essentially the same, program.
Okay, and you're at JABSOM, and
Right.
you're seeing patients,
Right.
clinically AIDS patients, and you're working with drugs to try to figure
Right.
out the demographics
Right.
and all that. So
Yeah.
what happened going forward?
Well, first of all, one of the things we found out is that if you want to know about why the disease does what it does, you find out that you need laboratory researchers to collaborate with. And so over time, what we've done is we've gathered a group of scientists who are also involved in HIV. Here. Actually, I should say, we have very strong collaborations with some investigators that are already here, but we've also recruited investigators here. And so over time, we built up a laboratory part of our program, and it's been, wonderful because, you know, you see a patient and the patient, you know, has this problem. You say, maybe it's because the immune system is this way. And so you call up your laboratory investigator and you brainstorm about this, and you construct a research project to answer that question.
To confirm
That's
whether
right.
that theory is right.
Yeah, and then if you confirm it, you say, so what can we do about it? Oh, well, you know, there's a drug that does this. And then you're right back to clinical research.
So it's an iterative.
Right.
Speaking of iterations, I have a strong feeling we're going to have a break now. We're going to have a promotional break for a minute. Okay, that's Cecilia Shikuma at the John A. Burns School of Medicine. She's a professor of medicine there. We're here on Likeable Science. Indeed, this is a likeable discussion. We're talking about AIDS research at JABSOM. We'll be right back.
Ted Ralston, folks, host of our show at ThinkTech Hawaii called Where the Road Leads, where we talk about technology influencing the future of Hawaii. Technology, of course, is the art of solving problems. We always bring in interesting and informed guests who can see from different perspectives and different points of view how that future might unfold and how technology can assist us in getting there. So once again, join us 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock on Fridays. Ted Ralston, your host. And please, if you have ideas that you'd like us to address on this show or folks who you think should be on it, let us know.
You know, this points out some theories that I have about what science has done in the past 10 or 15 years. And that is, one is collaboration is everything. And you're in this case, you're doing that iterative collaboration with people who are sort of on the other side of the mirror. So it's really, you know, robust collaboration. And the second thing I've found, which I'd like you to talk about, is the fact that science and medicine is all about data.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, oncology in general is all about data, and surely AIDS is all about data, and that's the way you approach these complex diseases. So, okay, so you're doing the collaborative between the laboratory and the clinical. Somewhere in there, you realize you got to have plenty of data. What happens?
Yeah, we generate lots of data. We have to be very compulsive of gathering all the important information you have on the patients, because you need to make sure that they're safe. You have to find out how tolerable it is. You have to really have endpoints where you're saying, to prove that this is effective, I need to demonstrate X, Y, and Z, you know. And that's on top of demographic data, you know, height, weight, you know, vital signs, those kinds of things. So one thing that we really realized very early on is that we need superb statisticians, biostatisticians, to analyze the data. And we used to do it ourselves. You know, it's not that I'm trained in biostats, but you know, anyone can learn some rudimentary things.
That's another thing, you know, if you're a scientist and you have to get something done in aid of your research, well, you do it.
Yeah.
Many times, yeah.
But you know, it's now become sophisticated enough. For example, that JABSOM now has a biostatistical core. And we do have somebody from that core that works with us.
Just in biostatistics?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And so this one biostatistician actually knows a lot about HIV. So when we talk to him and saying, this is what we want to analyze, he understands what the problem is, how it should be analyzed, and if there are factors that we need to consider, he can help us, you know, figure out how to do that.
So you're giving the statistician the raw data,
Right.
that you find out exactly what data you need in order to make sense of it. He gives you back some kind of processed report, which is your requirements.
Right.
And now you have the report on the desk.
Right.
What does the report tell you?
It usually tells you that something's significant or different, you know, and so most of science is constructed in the sense of having enough people to study so that you can say that the effect that you got from, you know, drug B is significantly different or better than what you got from drug A. So hopefully that's the kind of report you're trying to, you know, get back.
These are experimental drugs.
Yes.
Created on the mainland by big drug companies. And as a medical researcher, you can use any drug that's, it has to be approved up to a point, right?
Well, yeah, it's a lot more complex than that. There are some drugs that are developed locally.
Is that
but,
right? Where? At the university?
Yeah, university. Not, we haven't done any local HIV drugs, but I think the Cancer Center, for example, has some
Okay.
development of drugs locally.
Okay.
But the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, is extremely picky, as they should be, about what you do, especially to humans.
Even if it's experimental, they still want to
Especially if it's
control it,
experimental.
because if you don't know exactly what you're dealing with, you could really be doing harm.
That's right, that's right.
Yeah.
And so there is a very detailed process that you have to go through. And you will not be able to open any kind of drug trial unless the FDA says, yep, you have proven to me that it's safe, or that the risks are minimal compared to what you're trying to prove. For example, in a disease that causes death, you might be able to accept toxicity, to a certain point.
Mm-hmm. I'd rather have toxicity than die.
Than die, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And so you need to get FDA approval. And then you take the protocol of what you're planning to do to what's called the Institutional Review Board. And the university has one. Queens also has one. But they are an independent group of composed of both scientists and lay people who read the protocol and make a judgment as to whether they think that the study should move forward or not.
Whether it's worthwhile.
That's right, that's right. And unless you have IRB approval, you will not be able to proceed.
And you have to deal with this as a director.
That's right, that's right.
You have to look at the drugs, find the drug you think will work, get an FDA approval for the use of it in that experiment, and then get the board's approval as to the protocol.
That's right.
That's a lot of work.
That is a lot of work.
Yeah.
It takes a very, fairly long time
Yeah.
to get it.
Oh, and then you got to do it,
That's right.
which
That's
also
right.
takes a while.
That's right. And what we found is that you really need skilled nurses, especially if you're dealing with something that is rather risky, because you don't want the patients to get into trouble.
Yeah.
And so we have a wonderful group of 5 research nurses.
Research nurse.
Yeah.
This is a new item.
Yeah.
A research nurse. A nurse is dedicated to clinical medical research.
Research, yeah. And like you said, they're not paid as much as if you were working for Queens, for example.
Yeah.
But I think they have a passion for
Psychic gratification.
research.
Yeah.
And especially for HIV. And so I think the one that came on the last is actually been with us for 15 years. So they've been really long-term, employees of our program.
Yeah. So let's talk about the people for a minute. So here you are in JABSOM, and you have a physical, right there in Kaka'ako. And I don't know what the frequency of finding somebody with AIDS is in this community, but I guess there are enough people with AIDS here to justify the research. You have to have a certain critical mass of AIDS patients in order to do this research. And you find them. How do you find them? Other doctors who are treating them, call you and say, Cecilia, could you take a look at this patient?
Yeah, so we do have a very close relationship with the doctors in the community that treat HIV patients. And it's only a fairly select group because, HIV care is complex enough so that it becomes very, very difficult for a general practitioner to really get into HIV care.
Right.
Particularly when, in terms of reimbursement, if you get the same amount back from the insurance company, whether you treat somebody with a common cold or somebody with HIV.
Take the common cold.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think I really believe that the patients are better off if they are taken care of by physicians who really understand HIV care.
Yeah. So you have a kind of network of these people, these physicians.
That's right.
And they have an AIDS patient. They're trying their best, and they say to the AIDS, I guess this is the way it works. I'm just imagining. So they say to the AIDS patient, Dr. Shikuma at the medical school is doing some research on some trial medicines, drugs. Would you be interested in participating? And I would imagine most of those patients, especially if they're frustrated and facing a drear result, will say, absolutely, I'm there. Tell me when to report in. And they come in. Is that what happens? Some say, no, I don't want it.
Yeah, well, I think one thing that I should tell you is that HIV is not what it used to be when I first saw the first patient. Nowadays, they have pills that are, combination pills of 3 drugs rolled into one. So all you have to do is take 1 pill once a day, and it keeps the virus suppressed to the point where, theoretically, you can live to a ripe old age.
As ripe as you might otherwise live?
Yeah. So it's like diabetes, where as long as you control it, your prognosis is really pretty good.
This has all happened since you got involved.
Yeah.
You must be really happy about that.
Oh, yeah,
The disease has essentially, with controls, has been licked in a way.
Yeah, and it's been exciting for me because I saw the whole evolution. The first drugs that really made a dent are this drug class called protease inhibitors. And you could almost see somebody who's very malnourished, sickly, turn around, and in about 2 months, they were a different person. And it was
That's
really
amazing.
exciting to have been around then.
When you say that they have to have the drugs and have to have control, do they also have to control their sexual activity, or does that not matter once you're on the regimen?
Well, it's related because our Center for Disease Control says that if you have an HIV patient that takes his medicines regularly, then they're not really likely to transmit it to somebody else because their virus is controlled.
Yeah. So control really means control here.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's suppressed, and it's what I don't want to call it. His vitality is suppressed.
Yeah.
This is quite amazing.
It is amazing.
So what's left to research?
Well, the trouble is that they have to keep taking these medicines every single day, because the kind of the virus, essentially embeds itself in your human genetic structure. So it's very hard to get it out completely.
Yeah, but we learn a lot about the human genetic structure by following it.
Yeah. But so if you stop taking the meds, the virus comes back.
So
we cannot cure it right now.
So there's something in there that resists, that lives.
That's right.
Even if it's contained with the drugs.
Yeah. Wow. And actually, there is one person in the world who all scientists are kind of convinced that it's cured of HIV.
Completely cured?
Completely.
One person?
One person.
What's the difference between him and all the rest?
Well, what happened is that this one HIV-infected patient developed leukemia. And what you do with the person for leukemia is you irradiate them, give them chemotherapy, and you wipe out their whole immune system and replace it with somebody else's. And so to replace this immune system, they found an individual who actually has a genetic structure that makes their cells a little bit resistant to being infected by HIV. And so having given him the replacement, bone marrow stem cells, and I believe they had to do it twice. They now cannot find any evidence
of any virus.
Yeah.
So they had to do it twice. The first time wasn't successful.
Yeah.
The second time was successful.
Right.
But theoretically, in there, and we'll take a break after this, but theoretically, in there, you can conclude that you can replace an immune system in such a way as to completely stop.
That's right. You can cure HIV. That was the exciting, thing.
But we don't know exactly how to do that
That's
just
right.
yet.
That's right.
But we're studying it.
Right.
Yeah. That's Cecilia Shikuma. Wow, exciting. A professor of medicine at the John A. Burns School of Medicine. Also, and she's an AIDS, HIV researcher. She's the director of the Hawaii Center for AIDS, and we are learning so much. This is Likeable Science. We're talking about AIDS research at JABSOM. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the greater implications of this work in terms of the science industry, science research here in Hawaii. We'll be right back.
Aloha, my name is Josh Green. I host a show called Healthcare in Hawaii here on ThinkTech. We get together once a week or sometimes twice a month. Depends. When we're busy, we get together less often, but we love to see you here to talk about the preeminent healthcare issues in our state. Our programs vary very widely. We talk about economics, we talk about healthcare, we talk about social issues on this program. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, we're back. We're live with Cecilia Shikuma, MD, a professor of medicine at the John A. Burns School of Medicine, who has dedicated her professional life to research in AIDS and HIV. And she is the director of the Center for AIDS. And one thing you mentioned during the break just now, Cecilia, is that there have been funding issues. Can you tell us the history of funding for your work?
Well, you know, our entire program depends on grants. And most of the grants come from the federal government, from the National Institute of Health. And in the first 10 years that I was leading our program, most of our money came from being part of this national research group called the AIDS Clinical Trials Group. And you mentioned before that, you know, you need a certain amount of patients to do research, and that's true. And Hawaii actually is not a hotbed for HIV, which we're actually very, very proud of. Mm. You know, it means to me that the State Department's doing its job to keep it under control. Yeah. But I believe it's about 8 years ago, all of a sudden, you know, we were told by the federal government that, you know what, your science, the contributions you made to science is great, but you don't have a population that we think, you know, can support the volume of research we want done at your site. And with about 2 months' notice, they, you know, we got defunded. And this was money that was about $1.2 million in direct funds to our program a year.
Oh, that hurts.
Yeah, that was really devastating. And it was, you know, I think I've gotten a little bit more astute about getting other grants, you know, doing other things to... That's
another job you have, eh?
Yes, yes. But I wanted to tell you what happened then, because to me, I'm very, very grateful to actually the people in Hawaii and to the state legislature. Because I went to my bosses at the university and said, could you, you know, I need money to tide us over. And they said, well, you know, we get our money, as you know, from the state legislature. It's too late because actually we just submitted the university budget to, at that time, Governor Lingle last week. So it's left the university. We can't put any more money requests.
And you were stuck because you had no lead time.
That's right, that's right. And so, you know, we have an advisory board, you know, made up of, you know, investigators, but also lay people, some of whom are HIV infected. So they looked at me and said, well, in that case, we better go directly to the legislature. And to me, that sounded like an absurd idea.
Outside the budget.
Outside the budget.
Wow.
And actually outside the university, which I guess the university was not particularly happy about.
Sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
But they had, you know, our patients actually went and solicited the advice and the support of some of the legislatures. Some of them actually knew the board of directors for the university and said, Cecilia, you need to see this person, that person, this person. Had a legislature actually submit a bill, one into the House and one to the Senate, asking for funding for our program.
Oh, wonderful.
And, you know, it went through, and at the end they called me up and said, so how do you want the money? You know,
I'll take it in 20s.
Yeah. But, you know, we would not have survived if the state legislature had not taken upon themselves to support our program.
That's a great story.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I guess I'm grateful that they believed in our science and our research. But by that time, it hasn't come up, but we had also started some clinics. And, you know, the neighbor islands is suffering from a lack of physicians. And, you know, HIV care is one area that they really need physicians. And so we started to go 1/2 day a month to the Hilo side and 1/2 day a month to the Kona side and 1/2 day a month to Maui to just support the patients there. And I think the legislature really thought that that was a good idea, that that was one way to preserve, you know, good HIV medical care for that population,
Yeah.
and felt that if we disappeared, that would suffer.
Yeah, and if you disappeared and the care deteriorated because of that or around that, then it would be very tragic.
Yeah.
So, have they done it every year now?
Yes, we continue to do it, it's been. It feels good to provide what I consider a medical safety net, for the HIV-infected population in Hawaii. A lot of them do have their own physicians, which is fine, but for those who don't, or we don't. We take care of anyone that needs help.
So you're not only doing research, you're helping the physicians who may not be fully trained in this area. And so that patient out there, whether he's in Oahu or the other islands, has the benefit of your knowledge in his treatment.
Yeah. And we work closely with, there are nonprofit AIDS service organizations, in each of the islands. And, they help to provide the resources, things like they help them get insurance coverage if they don't know how, housing, those kinds of
Well, that's
things.
great. I mean, it's really a total support system, and your center is involved in all of these things. I just wonder, in the case of the National Institute's, declining further grant coverage, didn't they care about the diversity aspect? Hawaii has this fantastic resource that often we use and should, because we have, this racially diverse population. I mean, isn't that always relevant to every medical, disease?
It is.
Did they care about that?
I told them that, and they said, Native Hawaiians and Asians, we can get them from California.
Oh, but we have
Yeah.
they weren't really listening.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the industry now.
Okay.
JABSOM has a certain amount of teaching, and it has research, and it has the research center over there on the other side. I guess you're in that building?
Yes.
Okay, and then it has the cancer center right
Right.
next door. So it sounds like a good part of JABSOM's effort here is in research, which is expensive and hard, maybe more expensive than the other parts of teaching kids how to be doctors and all. So what do you think about the effort? I mean, how far has it gotten? What does it need, including money? What does it need going forward? In other words, researchers and people who stay around and help the effort, and cooperation in the medical community. So what is it like, and what does it need?
Okay. Most of, I think it's for medical research, almost all, I would say about 80% of the funding for those kinds of things comes from our National Institute of Health. And the NIH has suffered in recent years from the same cutbacks that Congress has been, levying on almost all agencies.
You saw the paper today, though, about how the president wants to increase spending, including in this area.
Oh, that would be great.
By,
Yeah.
gee whiz, by billions and billions.
Yeah.
Which will be good.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe
it should
we
be
can come
really
back
good.
from the cliff,
Yeah. But it's so bad that right now, for every grant that you write, most people do not submit, very poorly written grants to NIH. And so most of them are stellar. And out of the number that are submitted, they are only funding about 8% of the total.
So that means you can write a grant, but only 1/12 of the time.
That's right.
Your effort is going to be worthwhile.
That's
and
right.
this is after you spent a lot of time and
That's
energy and perfection writing a perfect grant, which
That's
isn't
right.
that easy.
That's right. And most of the time, you end up having to defend your stance of why this research needs to be done. And you need what's called preliminary data, or data that, convinces someone that, yeah, I think you're right, this is what you're going to find.
So it's not an open question. You have to come with a question that has at least in part been solved.
That's right, that's right.
That's a burden.
It is a burden, and it costs money.
Yeah.
And and I think our dean is aware of it. And so there's a lot of effort put into trying to make funding available for pilot studies. So funding is obviously very, very important.
Federal funding.
Well, I think we need local funding.
From the state legislature.
From the state legislature, from the community, whatever, so that you can get a little bit of preliminary data that will help you get the big grants.
Yeah. We have to build this. This is the industry you're talking about. And I think you're answering my question, to the extent that we need to do this as a step forward to building an industry. I recall Ed Cadman, who a wonderful man, you must have known him.
Oh, yeah.
Who had this vision, this dream of Kaka'ako being a big pharma campus of big pharma, national big pharma companies, global big pharma. And one of the benefits of that, of course, is they would write checks, and they would do information and money and research right around the campus. Is there any chance that that might happen now, or we have to deal with them on the mainland?
I would love to have that happen. I think I don't know enough about the political or the tech, industry structure to know whether that's going to be possible or not. It would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, your effort every day takes us closer to that possibility somehow.
Yeah.
So what about getting researchers and keeping researchers and training researchers? How are we doing in that? What does it take to hold a person like you for as long as possible? What does it take to train a person like you? What does it take to take a medical doctor or a student and make him in the same vein somehow? What does it take?
Well, I think one of the problems is that you cannot learn research in a very short 1 or 2 years. I would say it takes, maybe 5 to 10 years of very intensive training to get to be a very competent researcher.
What is a competent researcher?
Someone who, I guess, can hold their own on a national level and get grants.
It's more than just a test tube in the laboratory.
Yeah. And I think that there are scientists here that are very competent to be mentors. I know our dean has programs trying to encourage that, particularly people who are represented in the sciences, like our Native Hawaiians, Filipinos. But I think the other problem with that is retaining them in research. And I think, that there are people with a passion for research who would love to do research and are willing to forego the high-end salaries of maybe a physician out in the community.
That's nice to hear.
But, even a researcher can be very expensive.
Even at a reduced salary.
Yeah, a reduced salary.
It's a whole enterprise going on.
That's right. And the funding, level and the fiscal restraints that JABSOM is on is so tight that we're not even able to make that happen.
So, so much of this falls on JABSOM, whether it's on, your research in your building or the Cancer Center. What about the hospitals? What about Queens? What's the degree of research, what's of the pie, so to speak, going on over there? And I know hospitals have trouble these days. Some of them close. Are they doing research? Are they doing as much research as they might if they were transplanted to the mainland? How can we encourage them to do more research? And I guess, how can we collaborate with anything they do?
Yeah, well,
That's the most compound question I've asked in a long time.
Well, there is really good research going on at Queens. Queens does heavily support JABSOM to a certain extent. And it's, things like, I know they allow us, our program, for example, to have access to their resources at a reduced rate.
This is very important.
That's right.
It reduces your expenses.
That's right. I want to do an ultrasound. They will have a discounted research rate.
Oh, that's very good.
Yeah. And they have their own researchers, like the Andrea Flagg, and they're doing superb research. I think one of the problems is, as you pointed out, there's not enough collaborations. It might not just be a University of Hawaii thing. It may be nice to include, the Queens researchers and researchers in Chaminade and, wherever there's researchers.
Yeah, really
together.
important going forward.
Yeah.
So I guess, I guess it's hard to ask you, but I'll ask anyway. where is this all going? Are we going to be a notable place of research, your kind of research, but all medical research in the national scene? Do we have a shot at that? And what do we have to do as a community to improve the odds?
You know, I think we have a shot at it. You know, we are the gateway to the Asia Pacific. And there is a lot of actually exciting research also being done there. And
In Asia?
In Asia. You know, despite what people think, I think it really makes a difference that these researchers in Asia come to Hawaii, and they actually feel more comfortable in Hawaii than they do on the mainland. Somehow, you know, I think our cultural ties, you know, are a lot closer to them than on the mainland. Time-wise, you know, we can communicate to them during daytime hours. You know, California may be okay, but by the time you get to the East Coast, it's very difficult. And that actually is a very practical, but a very important issue when it comes to research. So that I, you know, would love to see us collaborating more with Asia. I think that there's...
They might invest also.
Yes, yes.
Well, you know, I have a vision. Let me express my vision. My vision is a huge conference of thousands, of tens of thousands of people who are researchers here. They're the prime. Researchers from Asia, researchers from the mainland, from Europe, and they're all collaborating like crazy, and it's right here. And we have new management at the convention center. We have new vitality there. Maybe we can do this. I want to be there with you, Cecilia.
That sounds like a wonderful vision. I would love to be there too.
Cecilia Shikuma, MD, professor of medicine at the John Abrams School of Medicine, a researcher in HIV and AIDS, and the director of the Hawaii Center for AIDS, a person who's dedicated her professional life to this subject. AIDS research at JABSOM here in Likeable Science. I have been thrilled and delighted to talk to you. Thank you so much.
It's been wonderful.
Aloha.